A confirmed royal story rarely comes with this much genuine internal disagreement attached to it. Harry and Meghan's move back to the UK is real. It's been confirmed by Buckingham Palace and reported by essentially every major outlet covering this family. But how the rest of the royal household actually feels about it is a lot more complicated and a lot more divided than a single headline can capture. So let's go through exactly what's confirmed, what's genuinely well-sourced insider reporting, and what's tabloid speculation dressed up as fact. Because this is exactly the kind of story where that distinction matters most. If you want more of this kind of grounded, fact-checked coverage, consider subscribing. Let's get into it. Quick recap on the move itself, since we covered the initial announcement in detail already. Buckingham Palace confirmed that Harry, Meghan, and their children, Archie and Lilibet, are relocating to the UK for an extended period while keeping their homes in Montecito and Portugal. They'll remain non-working members of the royal family, with no plans to resume official duties. The exact location of their new residence hasn't been disclosed, though CNN has speculated it could be somewhere near the Spencer family's Northamptonshire estate, given Harry's close ties to his mother's side of the family, or possibly in the Cotswolds, where the couple has maintained friendships over the years. Nothing on the location is confirmed yet, so treat any specific claims about where they're moving with appropriate caution until there's an actual announcement. Here's how Charles responded, and this part is genuinely well confirmed across multiple credible outlets. According to The Guardian, Charles learned of the decision on Sunday, August 16th, and welcomes the opportunity to see more of his family in a personal capacity. CNN and CBS both reported similar language, describing the king as pleased with the move. That tracks with everything we've covered about how Charles has approached his relationship with Harry over the past year or so, private visits, the Highgrove reunion with his grandchildren, and a clear, consistent pattern of prioritizing personal time with his son and grandchildren following his own cancer diagnosis. On Charles's side of this story, there's no ambiguity. He's on record, through multiple credible sources, as genuinely happy about this. It's worth noting how consistent this reaction has been with the king's public messaging over the past 2 years more broadly. Since his diagnosis, Charles has repeatedly framed his illness as having reshaped his priorities, emphasizing family time and personal connection in ways he hadn't necessarily emphasized publicly before. This response fits that same pattern perfectly. A monarch who's spoken openly about wanting to make the most of his time, extending that same instinct to welcoming his son and grandchildren back into closer proximity, regardless of any complications that might create elsewhere in the family. It's the kind of consistency that makes his positive reaction easy to believe at face value, rather than reading it as a diplomatically worded statement masking private reservations. Now, here's where the story gets more complicated and where you need to start paying closer attention to sourcing. According to reporting picked up by Stylecaster and citing outlets like Woman's Day, William and Kate were, in their words, absolutely fuming to be blindsided by the decision, with one insider describing palace staff as stunned. Another claim in that same reporting suggested William believes Harry and Meghan are quietly hoping to eventually be welcomed back into an official royal role, something the source described William as finding almost unbelievable given everything that's happened. It's worth being upfront that this tier of reporting relies on unnamed insider sources through tabloid-adjacent outlets, rather than the more directly sourced, corroborated reporting we have on Charles's reaction. That doesn't mean it's false. Tabloid sourcing on royal family sentiment has sometimes turned out to be accurate over the years, but it does mean it deserves more skepticism than the Charles reaction, which multiple major outlets have independently confirmed using similar language. What is more solidly confirmed directly from CNN is that there's been no public comment at all from Prince William or Princess Catherine on the move. That silence itself is worth noting. Given how much attention this story has generated, a complete absence of any statement, even a brief, neutral one, is consistent with reports that the couple isn't thrilled about the situation. Though it's also just as consistent with a couple who prefer, as a matter of general practice, not to comment publicly on Harry-related developments at all, something they've done fairly consistently since 2020. So the silence tells us something, but probably not as dramatic a story as some tabloid framing wants to suggest. It's worth thinking about the incentives at play here too, because they help explain why this particular gap in sourcing exists. Charles has clear reasons to let his positive reaction become public. It reinforces the reconciliation narrative he's been quietly building with Harry for over a year. And it costs him very little to say something warm and welcoming, even if there's private complexity behind the scenes. William and Kate, by contrast, have much less to gain from commenting either way. A warm statement would look forced and possibly insincere given the reported tension, while a cool or hesitant statement would generate exactly the kind of royal rift headlines the family has spent years trying to move past. Silence, in that context, is actually the safest available option, regardless of how William and Kate genuinely feel, which makes it a poor tool for reading their actual emotional state one way or the other. Quick break. If you're finding this kind of grounded source-by-source royal coverage useful, drop a comment letting me know what topic you want fact-checked next, and I'll prioritize it. Let's talk about why a frustrated reaction from William, even if we can't confirm the specific quotes attributed to him, would actually make a lot of sense, given everything else going on. Since Charles's cancer diagnosis in 2024, William has taken on considerably more of the day-to-day institutional workload, stepping up as heir in ways that go beyond his prior responsibilities, exactly as CNN's own reporting has noted. That's a real, documented shift in how much weight is on William's shoulders right now. Against that backdrop, having his estranged brother suddenly relocate to the UK, seemingly without much advance coordination with him specifically, even though he was informed around the same time as Charles, could understandably feel like an added complication landing on an already full plate, especially given the ongoing, unresolved tension between the two brothers that we've covered extensively before. There's also a reasonable, practical concern buried underneath any personal frustration: managing public perception. If Harry and Meghan's UK presence generates the kind of intense media attention their past visits have, and there's little reason to think it wouldn't, that attention inevitably becomes something William and Kate have to navigate too, simply by being the other most prominent royal couple in the country at the same time. Reports have suggested William's team has begun preparing for exactly that kind of scenario, thinking through how to manage the renewed scrutiny that comes with the Sussexes' return, though again, the specific details of those preparations come from less rigorously sourced reporting. So treat the finer points with some caution, even if the underlying concern makes logical sense. Let's revisit where Harry and William's relationship actually stands, because that's the real, underlying story here, more than any single reaction to this specific announcement. The two brothers have been estranged for years, and the last confirmed time they were seen together was at the funeral of their uncle, Robert Fellows, in August 2024. Royal commentator Kinsey Schofield told Page 6 back in July that William has no plans to reconcile with his brother. That's a pretty direct, on-record assessment from someone who covers this family closely, and it lines up with everything else we know about how frosty this particular relationship has remained, even as Harry's relationship with Charles has visibly warmed. There is, however, a more hopeful thread in some of the reporting worth mentioning honestly. According to a source who spoke with Closer magazine, Harry is described as wanting to settle his differences with William once and for all, now that the two are going to be living closer together again. Driven partly by wanting his father to see his sons at peace, and partly by the approaching 30th anniversary of Diana's death next year. That's a real reported sentiment, though it comes from a single magazine source rather than something independently corroborated elsewhere, so it's best understood as one account of Harry's private hopes, rather than a confirmed fact about where reconciliation efforts actually stand. It's worth remembering just how far back this particular estrangement goes, because it puts the current situation in a fuller context. Tension between the brothers has been publicly documented for years now, going back at least to reports of friction during Harry's courtship of Meghan in 2018, through the couple's decision to split their household from William and Kate's in 2019, their formal step back from senior royal duties in January 2020, and Harry's 2023 memoir, Spare, which included pointed, publicly aired criticism of both his brother and father. That's roughly 8 years of documented distance, punctuated by only a handful of brief, formal appearances together. The Windsor Walkabout, following Queen Elizabeth's death in 2022, the unveiling of Diana's statue in 2021, and glimpses at family funerals. Against that, long a backdrop, a single relocation announcement, however significant, is unlikely to undo years of accumulated distance on its own, no matter how much either brother might privately want it to. It's genuinely useful, when you're following a story like this, to sort every claim into rough tiers of reliability, rather than treating everything with the same weight. At the top tier, you've got directly attributed statements confirmed by multiple major outlets. Charles welcoming the move, the basic facts of the relocation itself, William's team declining to comment. In the middle tier, you've got claims from a single credible outlet, with named or clearly described sources, like Kinsey Schofield's comments on William's stance. And at the bottom tier, you've got anonymous insider claims from tabloid-adjacent outlets describing emotional reactions, internal meetings, or private conversations nobody involved has confirmed on the record. All three tiers get reported with roughly the same confident tone, but they don't deserve the same level of trust. And it's worth being honest with yourself and with your audience, if you're covering this professionally, about which tier a given claim actually falls into. This kind of tiered thinking becomes especially important with a story this fast-moving, because the gap between confirmed fact and speculation tends to widen the longer a story stays in the news cycle without an official follow-up statement. In the first day or two after a major announcement like this, most outlets are working from the same limited set of confirmed details, which is why you saw such consistent reporting on Charles's reaction across CNN, CBS, NBC, and The Guardian almost simultaneously. But as the days go by without any further official comment, especially from William and Kate, outlets start filling that vacuum with their own sourcing, some of it well-grounded, some of it considerably less so. That's exactly the pattern we're seeing now. A solid, well-corroborated core story from days 1 and 2, surrounded by an expanding ring of insider claims of varying quality as the news cycle stretches into its second week without any additional formal statements from the family itself. There's one more category worth flagging explicitly because it's important to be responsible here. Some outlets have run much more extreme, unverified claims recently, including speculation about serious strain in Harry and Meghan's marriage tied to disagreements over this exact decision. Those claims trace back to a single tabloid source, with a track record of speculative, often unconfirmed reporting on this couple specifically, and nothing about them has been corroborated by any of the credible outlets covering this story. Given how serious and personal a claim like that is, it's worth treating it with real skepticism rather than repeating it as though it's established fact. And honestly, it's the kind of claim that probably doesn't deserve airtime at all, until there's something more substantial behind it. That kind of unverified marital strain claim is actually a useful case study in a broader pattern worth watching for. Whenever a couple makes a major life decision, especially a couple as heavily covered as Harry and Meghan, there's a predictable tendency for some outlets to assume the decision must have involved conflict, simply because conflict makes for a more compelling story, than two people agreeing on something together. It's entirely possible and honestly more consistent with the confirmed facts we do have that both Harry and Meghan arrived at this decision jointly, weighing the same practical factors: Harry's charity work, proximity to his father during his health recovery, the children's schooling, without any of the dramatic tension some outlets have chosen to imply. Absent real, corroborated reporting suggesting otherwise, there's no good reason to assume the more dramatic version is the true one, just because it happens to be more clickable. There's also a broader institutional angle worth considering here, beyond just the personal dynamics between the two brothers. The monarchy as an institution generally benefits from presenting a united, stable image, and a visibly divided family, even one divided only by unofficial insider reports rather than public statements, works against that broader interest. It's plausible that part of why we haven't seen any public comment from William or Kate is a deliberate institutional choice to avoid feeding a royal family torn apart narrative. Regardless of how they privately feel about the timing or manner of Harry and Meghan's return, Charles, as the reigning monarch, has more latitude to express personal warmth without it being read as an institutional statement, since his role inherently blends the personal and the ceremonial in a way William's more operationally focused role doesn't quite allow for yet. That distinction between Charles speaking as a father and William potentially having to speak as the future king managing institutional stability might explain a good deal of the different public postures we're seeing, separate from whatever personal feelings either man actually has about his brother. So, what happens next? Watch for whether William or Kate ever issue any kind of public statement, even a brief one, since their continued silence is itself informative. Watch for whether Harry and William have any actual, confirmed contact once the Sussexes are physically settled back in the UK, since living in the same country doesn't automatically translate into reconciliation. And watch how this affects the broader royal calendar heading toward Diana's 30th anniversary next year, since that's shaping up to be the real test of whether these two brothers can find any common ground at all. Geography aside. That's the real, sourced state of things as of August 21, 2026. A confirmed, significant family reunion on one side, and a much more uncertain, still strained relationship on the other, with plenty of speculation filling the gaps in between that deserves real scrutiny before you treat it as fact. There's a broader lesson here that extends well beyond this specific story, honestly. Royal reporting sits at an unusual intersection. Genuine institutional news that affects a country's head of state, mixed with celebrity-style tabloid coverage that treats the family more like reality television subjects than public officials. Both traditions exist simultaneously, often within the same news cycle, sometimes even within the same article. And telling them apart takes real, active effort rather than passive consumption. A story like this one, a confirmed significant relocation wrapped in layers of unverified emotional speculation, is about as clear an example as you'll find of why that effort matters. If there's a genuine update, a real statement from William or Kate, or confirmed movement in the brothers' relationship, I'll be covering it here, so make sure you're subscribed for that. And if you missed our earlier breakdown of exactly how and why Harry and Meghan decided to move back, I covered that in full detail in another video. You can check it out by clicking right here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.